Good morning. Welcome back. It's day one of Voices, BOF's annual gathering for big thinkers. I'm Imran Ahmed, founder and CEO of the Business of Fashion. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you watching at home, our BOF professional members all around the world, to watch our live stream from here at Soho Farmhouse in Oxfordshire. Please don't forget, you can join the global conversation and share your feedback using the hashtag BOFVoices. We'll be asking our speakers some questions, and if we're running on time, I will ask them on your behalf. It's time to go inside the fashion system. In the next hour and a half, we will hear from the CEO of the industry's hottest brand, Balenciaga. We'll explore cultural collaborations with Tommy Hilfiger, India Moore, Halima Aden, and Gillian Mercado. We'll dive into the new learnings about circularity in fashion design with another Dame Ellen MacArthur, and we have an exclusive announcement from the International Director of Elle. I'm excited that we'll be sharing some updates from Voices alumni who have graced this stage in the past. But first, we begin with a bit of context about what's going on in the world around us and how that will impact the fashion industry in 2022. For the 6th year in a row, we are publishing The State of Fashion, our forward-looking report on the year ahead, created in partnership with McKinsey & Company. BOF professionals, you all received a link to this year's report in your daily digest this morning. The Voices community here in Oxfordshire was the first to receive the report in your goodie bags in your rooms yesterday. And as always, we have identified 10 themes that will shape fashion in 2022, from changes in the global economy and the fashion system to underlying consumer shifts. If you have not yet downloaded the report, and I highly recommend you do, look at this video for a crash course on the state of fashion 2022.
Recovery from COVID-19 related economic shocks will be uneven across geographies. Fashion players with international footprints will need to look at investment decisions with precision, reassess local conditions regularly, and mitigate for market-specific risks. Fashion industry supply chains face unprecedented levels of disruption, from logistical bottlenecks, rising shipping costs, and material shortages. Companies must build in greater operational flexibility and rethink sourcing strategies to meet consumer demand. As international tourism will not fully recover until at least 2023, shopping patterns will continue to shift. Luxury players should invest more in domestic consumers and local e-commerce, while rebalancing their global retail footprints. Consumers will reallocate wallet share across fashion categories as pent-up demand for newness coincides with more social freedoms. Companies should anticipate these shifts by leaning on data-driven product development, adjusting their inventory mix accordingly. By experimenting with non-fungible tokens, gaming, and virtual fashion, brands will unlock new value streams which help them to engage with younger consumer cohorts and find new routes to creativity, community building, and commerce. Fashion players are using social commerce to create seamless shopping experiences from discovery to purchase. Though opportunities vary by market, companies should embrace in-app checkouts and test live streaming, augmented reality, and other associated technologies. The scaling of closed-loop recycling could help reduce fashion's environmental impact at the material level. As these technologies mature, companies should adopt closed-loop design principles and facilitate large-scale collection and sorting processes. Brands are adopting technologies that store and share product information to boost authentication, transparency, and sustainability. However, businesses must coalesce around common standards and engage with pilot projects at scale. Businesses face more threats of cyber attacks and risks of improper data handling than ever before. Fashion players must urgently improve their defenses and invest to make digital security a strategic imperative. To attract and retain the right talent, fashion companies must raise their game and prepare for an increasingly flexible, diverse, and digitized workplace as competition from within and outside the industry intensifies.
We are really proud of this report because our team and the McKinsey team have worked on it every year for 6 years. And so much effort goes into it. So I just want to pay a big thank you to the McKinsey team and the BOF team that put so much hard work into it. It has become the Bible that everyone looks at before, at the end of the year, and that's what we always hoped it would become. And so it's now my pleasure to invite Achim Berg, global leader of McKinsey's apparel, fashion, and luxury group, to answer a few questions I have about the report. Hi, Achim. Oh, you got the report. Okay, so this is what it looks like if you haven't seen it. That's a very good product placement there.
I didn't want to waste it.
All right. Okay, when we finished the last few edits on the report, there was no such thing as Omicron. And we made some predictions about a recovery next year. I'm curious to understand what's changed. As you look ahead, I know there's always so many scenarios, but what does everyone here need to know about next year in light of new developments in the last week?
Well, I think it's fair to say we don't know, how severe Omicron is. It could be a mild version. It could be a severe, So, and we somehow expected that, there would be mutations of the virus, and that it would take a bit longer to get, out of the pandemic. So we don't know how it's going to play out in detail. But I think it's fair to say that the fashion industry has recovered more fastly than we expected in the first place. So it confirms a bit the belief that things rarely play out as bad as they look, at first sight. So when we did the scenarios a year ago, we expected it would take until the end of 2022, maybe even 23, until we would go back to the 2019 levels. I think reality is we are close to 2019 levels at the end of this year. And I think the last 2-3 weeks will not, completely change that picture. We expected the global industry to grow by 3 to 8% in 2022.
3 to 8% is quite a big range, right?
Well, that's the nature of making predictions of the future. Yeah?
All right.
Yeah? So, no, but I think the key message is we expected growth, and we expected growth above the 2019 levels. And I think the reality is we still believe that. So will we run into big lockdowns, nationwide lockdowns? Will we have restrictions on international travel in addition to the ones we already have and live with? That's going to have an impact on the growth as well.
Was that taken into account in this 3 to 8%? So if worst case scenario, Omicron ends up being highly transmissible, deadly, and vaccine resistant, does that throw
well, then forget our forecast.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay. My next question is about, everyone's talking about supply chain issues. People are shopping early to try to get Christmas gifts on time. There's all sorts of challenges in ports and airports and factories and, shortages of lorry drivers, and it's like a chain reaction all over the world, and it's happening everywhere. What should the fashion industry be doing? We have this theme called logistics gridlock. How do we unlock the gridlock?
So I think it first shows and illustrates how, how many different things have to come into play and need to work out so that it works. I think we're so used to the fact that it works. Yeah, you order something, you put it on a ship, you put it on a plane, it arrives on time. So I think it's a reminder that, that is because, it was built up over a long period. It got out of sync. And that's what we're currently, grappling with. The whole ability to forecast, to plan, to deliver on time, is challenged, and that requires that the whole organizations pay more attention to the back end of the system. Yeah, we tend to focus a bit on the shiny front end, and to focus on what do consumers want, how do we deliver that, and we somehow expect the back end works. It requires a lot of skill, data, profession in order to do that, and I think that's where a lot of companies now will have to invest into to pick up to where they left it before the crisis.
Is part of the solution to kind of make our supply chains less dependent on big, markets like China? So do we need to, I don't think we can de-globalize the supply chains because supply chains are globalized, but do you advise fashion companies to kind of diversify their risk across multiple markets?
I think that was already in play long before COVID. So in that respect, the crisis is again an accelerator of a trend that we've seen before. Nearshoring, was expected to grow to 25-30% depending on the price points and depending also on the categories. We expect that will now come into play. That means sourcing from Turkey, East Africa for Europe, from Latin America for North America. Home shoring, we're still skeptical about, but for certain product categories in luxury, of course, it was always home shoring, so it doesn't need to go back home. But no, I think nearshoring is one of the levers to change that.
Okay, very quickly, inflation. It's ticking up all around the world. The cost base, therefore, for fashion companies is also ticking up. Companies like Chanel are raising their prices multiple times a year. On both the kind of consumer pricing side, but also on the cost side, how does this, inflation situation impact our industry?
Well, I think, let me put it that way. It's a great opportunity for the industry, and luxury companies did not require inflation to increase their prices.
No.
So, but I think for the mid-market, for value, for discount, it's a great opportunity because we were in a deflationary market for many, many years. Customers out there understand that prices are increasing for everything. They also accept now that prices for garments are increasing. We spoke about logistics. I think it's one of the key drivers why we see the price increases. We also believe once those problems are removed or start to smoothen, we will see some positive effects or negative effects on the further price increases. There is something about energy. To cut a long story short, we believe it's a kind of a temporary phenomenon. We still believe there is a need to check and control your costs. There is also an opportunity to work on the pricing side. So we'll need to see the positive things in life.
All right, Achim, thank you so much. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
All right. Over the coming days, we will continue to touch upon key themes from the state of fashion here on the Voices stage. A message to all of our BOF professionals at home or at work or at school. Next week, we'll be doing a special BOF live session with Achim and I to answer all of your questions about the state of fashion 2022. You can sign up at the link in the chat right now. All right. We often think of hype as the antithesis of timelessness, especially in fashion. Chunky dad sneakers and sweatshirts emblazoned with logos versus little black dresses and classic tailoring. Can one brand really straddle both? This year, Balenciaga showed its first couture collection since founder Cristobal Balenciaga closed the atelier in 1968. Balenciaga linked up with Kanye West for the launch of his album Donda. They launched a collaboration on Fortnite, including virtual fashion and immersive destinations within the game and a line of physical products. Balenciaga dressed Kim Kardashian for her viral appearance at the Met Gala. And then came the Simpsons film, which premiered at Paris Fashion Week, after an ingenious runway show that was unlike any other showgoers had ever seen before. Here to talk about Balenciaga's vision and how a soon-to-be 103-year-old luxury house continues to shape the fashion discourse is CEO Cedric Charbit. Hi, Cedric. Okay, so full disclosure, I had a short exchange with Cedric and the Balenciaga team about making it to Oxfordshire from Paris. How was your trip? It was fine?
It was so fine, and I'm so happy I'm here. It feels right and nice.
Okay, I'm delighted you're here too. Everyone is talking about Balenciaga right now because it's kind of managed to pierce the consciousness of fashion across a wide variety of areas, as I just mentioned. And I want to get to that, but first, I want to talk to you about the last 18 months. You're the CEO of this highly watched brand. What were the lessons that you learned running your business at a time when all of the things that Akim and I were just discussing, you have to manage those things every day. What have you learned how to manage in this period of such uncertainty?
A lot of learnings. And the biggest one for me is that the mindset and remaining, of course, agile and have a mindset that allows you to navigate through tough times is key. I am extremely lucky to be part of a group like Kering where you feel empowered and supported, and also to be able to do this duo, tandem, very nice duo with Demna. And his creative vision has been key for us to navigate and be successful. Creativity has not taken a pause at Balenciaga, and I think that has been one of the key learning for me. Never stop. With empathy, but never stop.
Okay. How did the business perform? Can you kind of walk us through the 18 months? What happened? We know what happened generally, but walk us through what happened for you and Balenciaga through all the ups and downs.
We have had a 2020 that was difficult, but we managed to have 2020 at the level of 19 performance-wise.
So it was flat year on year?
Slightly up.
Okay, slightly up.
Yep. Because we have, as I said, not taken a pause from a creative standpoint, and also we relied a lot on the online activities, clienteling, and of course our business in China has exploded. Repatriation of clients have shifted the perception of Balenciaga and the business reality. I also feel our team very fast in the process understood that work from home, being agile, work together, being in sync was key, and we remain client-centric. Also, we have anticipated, thanks to Demna's vision and thanks to the sort of the Balenciaga, the platform we became, we have anticipated, in my view, a lot of those things before something like this has happened. And to walk you through this, I'd like to explain that Balenciaga somehow became a platform. I often say we redefine luxury. Okay, big word. The truth is, what we do, we became a platform where anything is possible, and where innovation comes first, but we can do, you said, couture in 21, Fortnite the same quarter. You can blend The Simpsons and also go for an event in a museum. It's very, I think, shows the elasticity of the brand and the fact that Balenciaga went through this tough 18 months well, because we have been able to build that platform where the right conversations, the modern conversation, and the right shift could happen within the brand. And I'm happy for that culture we fostered and implement.
You're using the word platform, which is normally a word people use to describe technology companies, not almost 103-year-old fashion company. What is it about the brand that enables you to kind of operate like a platform? Is it things that you and Demna have worked on together to kind of platformize Balenciaga, or are there elements of Balenciaga that naturally lent themselves towards becoming more like a platform?
I feel it's, I think Cristobal Balenciaga, the founder, a century ago, started this brand as a couture house in a very classic way, if you look at it from a 2021 perspective. But if you look back at what Balenciaga was back in the days, it was extremely disruptive, it challenged the status quo, challenged expectation, the norms, what we call today elegance. Looking at the archive of Balenciaga was back in the days extremely shocking, daring, disrespectful. And like the cast, for example, of Balenciaga, Mr. Balenciaga was named like monsters. So,
why?
Because they were not the usual women you would see on a couture runway for their measurements, for their height, for their behavior, who they were socially as well. So I think he created a couture house that was a platform in the first place. And what Demna has brought to the brand since his arrival is, okay, the phenomenon success we know, but also that vision that's behind everything. And that's the starting point. I feel it became a platform because we started to talk about who we are, where we're going, the values, the craftsmanship, but not the usual. Like, for example, Balenciaga would clearly partner with World Food Program, make equally strong the values and the aesthetic, challenge the status quo, think outside of the box, and sort of like I think that forward thinking of his is something that in the end made us realize we became a platform. I don't think it was a goal. I think it's just like that, it happened. And when I see now that we can, in the same year, talk about couture, talk about engage with The Simpsons, create something like the Fortnite collaboration, having multiple drops, and all the activation we do, I think that's a stretch that I found extremely interesting. And I call it platform because luxury brand resonates to me in a very nice way, but also a bit old-fashioned, to be honest.
So luxury platform is the way you're thinking about Balenciaga.
Yes.
Okay, part of that platform is your presence in China, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And Balenciaga was under-penetrated in China, or relative to some of the other brands. What did you do during the pandemic? I mean, behind us, by the way, is a reprise of the couture collection that we all saw in Paris in July. So I know you did this big event, just recently, but when you were under-penetrated in terms of retail stores and presence in China, how did you go after that opportunity when, everything was stuck?
So we started before. I don't think it could be an action plan you activate the minute pandemic happens. So when I arrived, I remember the Balenciaga network in China was about 7 stores, and we moved to today roughly 50. So it has been a big retail expansion.
That's over how many years?
5 years.
5 years.
Anniversary, almost today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you for that. So China has been sort of like, we expanded our presence together with an instant connection with the Chinese audience. And to be honest, this is the country where we see the highest share of ready-to-wear and a very early adoption of trends. So I feel it was a connection somehow. Also, the tone of voice of Balenciaga has been perceived as different, and there is a high demand for being different, express yourself in China. I found it was just, it was obvious. But what's interesting about this is what we've shown to the Chinese audience, but let's say the global audience, is the Balenciaga of today. Demna's vision, fashion forward, edginess, and what we tried to achieve and what he has achieved since he has arrived. It's bring Balenciaga back where he should be and set ourselves for the future. But when you consider where we're coming from and who we are, you said we are more than a century. It's that part we have not shared and we have not told. And what's interesting is that today we have moved, and I think couture was the beginning. We moved to a moment and a phase where we start to, no storytelling, but tell our story. Share a bit more of our history. What people and what our audience know about Balenciaga is about what's new, what's next. That's the question I get. Where we're coming from is not clear. And this is what couture has helped. I read a lot of comments and also a lot of questions. So this is the Balenciaga's first couture collection in July 21. I was like, well, yeah, for Demna. But for the house, it's the 50th. We have had 30 years without, you said in 68, Cristobal Balenciaga closed the house. He felt ready to wear was coming, and he was not embracing this sort of like vibe of moving from couture, what he loved and adored, and he was a couturier in the first place, and what he felt he was. And he didn't want to do the ready-to-wear part, so he sort of shut down the house. For 30 years, the house has no history from a creative standpoint. And what's good is today we are reconnecting, reinventing the history of Balenciaga. Couture was a 50th collection. the event at the Tank Museum in Shanghai was also a way to express and expose ourselves and share our story with our audience. And what we're going to do next week, on December 8th, we're releasing the Fall 22 collection. And Fall 22 collection is I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be amazing, guys. It's a collection that's going to be it's called the Lost Tape collection, and it's about a collection from the 90s that never existed.
The 1990s.
Yes.
Okay.
So a collection that where Balenciaga, from a creative standpoint, in the early 90s was not so strong, and Demna is bringing back that piece of history of our brand and bring it to life today. And I think this is great because it's not about, again, storytelling. It's about telling a story.
So it will be the collection.
Make it clear, please.
Yeah, it will be the collection that if Balenciaga was operating as a business in the 1990s, the collection Balenciaga would have put out at that time.
Plus, don't go backwards, always forward. Demna's vision. So it's something that's going to look modern.
Okay. Talk to me about, the last time you and I sat down in Paris, it was just after the couture show.
I remember that day.
We were on the street in Paris, sitting in a cafe.
Don't press that button.
I haven't understood from you yet, or from Demna, what was the actual commercial response to couture? I know it created this earthquake on the internet. The show went everywhere. Everyone saw the images. But from a business standpoint, you had no idea when we sat down how it was going to do. Can you tell us now? How did it perform?
It went super well. We were expecting, we had no expectation. So it's above expectation. It's very good. It's a business. It's good. It's, of course, for us a way to say, again, where we're coming from, who we are, and to make sure Demna's vision that has been implemented on men, women, shoes, bags, and ready-to-wear to the highest part of the pyramid, the part where you can express yourself with the highest craft, the highest creativity, and sort of a new angle. And that was the thing. So was it a business decision? Yes, because I believe in long-term decision, and it was our duty to bring this back to Balenciaga. The legacy of that brand is one of the, I was about to say one of the best legacy ever, and I think it was good that Demna felt it was his mission to do it. So from a business standpoint, I feel it just closed the loop and closed the circle and makes our story full, and I think this is what we meant in doing this.
So, but that sounds like the very, expected approach that couture plays for a big luxury house, right? Because the luxury brands always talk about this pyramid where you have this dream that's crafted at the top, and that dream not only draws new customers and interest and excitement, it is also then, as they say in France, décliné. It's declined through the rest of the collection, and it becomes an idea factory. But does it make money? Will you is it run as a a image making factory, or is it run as a kind of standalone business?
It's run as an excellence department. Okay. So does it make money? Not much. Is that an investment more than anything? Yes. Do you still need to be cautious on what it costs? Yes. But it's our duty to do it. The platform we became, when I say platform, the word behind it, it's this big brand we became that can afford to do this, to be very direct.
Right.
And I think that was good. It's also a way for us to re-engage with our vision of timelessness. Cristobal Balenciaga was an innovator, the same way Demna is. And at Balenciaga, what's unique, and you said it's a logical, was it a logical, what did you say? Did you say luxury pyramid?
Yeah.
Yes, it's like you décliné. Balenciaga is not about décliné. Balenciaga is about creating a shock. Balenciaga is about innovation, doing something new, unexpected, challenge the status quo, and then eventually becomes timeless. And this, I feel, is quite powerful. And I feel Demna has really embodied, understood, and sort of transposed that heritage in a very, very powerful way. So for us, it's not about something timeless because we look backwards, but it's more something timeless because we keep on creating, innovating, and this innovation will eventually become something we look back and say, whew, that was a shock. I found it ugly. And now I find it just nice, a classic. So a classic was something that I found just my eyes and sort of adjusted I think this is our job, to change and challenge the status quo and make sure the way we do timeless and the way we do couture, if you will, are just ways where we start with a shock, something new and strong and groundbreaking, and then eventually becomes timeless or not.
Okay. About a month ago or so, Facebook sent out a tweet, and it said, after they renamed themselves Meta, short for Metaverse, asking Balenciaga what to wear in the Metaverse. And of course, like, everyone's talking about the Metaverse now. It was a word that wasn't in the kind of common lexicon even a year ago, but now, over the course of the year, it's kind of amazing how it's just become part of everyone's talking about it. And Balenciaga's been quite active in this space. So I'm curious about how, first, like, what have you been doing in that space and why? And second, what are your plans for the Metaverse as it goes forward? And, it's almost like the same question around couture, which is like, is that really about a business, or is it about marketing?
Okay, that's a good one. I saw that tweet at the Meta tweet, and I was like, screenshot it. I was like, what's that? And
you didn't know it was coming,
no,
right?
No. And I remember I said to myself, it's interesting how people, and how in people's mind, Balenciaga is already in the Metaverse. And I think that's because of, again, I mentioned him again, but I think it's about Demna. Demna's vision since he has arrived, and together with him, we have that vision where digital and something new and next level about digital is happening, and we wanted to embrace that. And when we started to think, and I think it was 9 months before we released the Fall 21 collection, we have, I remember it was a pandemic, and Demna phoned and said, okay, we're going to do next a video game.
So that was his idea?
Yeah, of course. For the Fall 21, it's going to be a video game, and I want to do this. It's also a nice way to express ourselves. Things have to become digital even more so. And you hear, in less than 7 months, 8 months, building a video game called The Afterworld that we released for Fall 21, and sort of like, at one point I remember we had 100 developers working on it. We created a video game. I mean, it's crazy.
Inside Balenciaga?
Well, no, we had partners, but they were sort of like fully dedicated. And we were doing body scanning instead of fittings, and everything was just like, wow, it was totally Metaverse. But we didn't know it. We were just going there because of his ideas and because of his vision. And it was gradually getting clear for us and for me that we needed to organize ourselves. Second came the Fortnite collaboration. Again, totally in the Metaverse. So because of that vision, and thanks to that vision, I think we have challenged ourselves and said, are we good? Are we sort of like organized for what's coming next? And it's true that, of course, gaming is very much into it. That's true. But some other pillars of our modern culture, let's say, and I'm going to miss a lot, but like work has become so digital. Socialization and dating, all this is just about digital. Shopping is like the online part is extremely... But if you look at it, those are about to become very strong and about to fall or go in the Metaverse. But today, the usability is a point that's missing. But when we're going to be a click away from Metaverse, all those pillars will just like shift. So what we wanted to do is to understand that we have, thanks to the vision, we have started that process. We also see clearly this is coming, and the usability is making like gigantic steps every day. So when this is going to be ready, we feel it's something that's going to be big. The third thing I want to say is that when we started this discussion, we were like, are we happy to call our followers community or audience? Yes. But it's not exactly what we meant and what we want. Are we happy to call our clients? Or do the clients evolve gradually to users? And now they become more sort of like, and we talk then to user experience. Is that the shift we're talking about? Maybe. Is our community evolving towards something that instead of being a follower, you become a participant? where we sort of like, and this is totally in the metaverse, because you gradually understand that you're going to create a world, and the world is going to be created around us where people are going to participate more. We're going to level up the interactions. For now, the climax of interaction with a luxury brand is we push content, you like, you comment, you post, or...
And then you buy.
You buy, this is great, it's climax of interaction, but I think we can get to a next level. And when the interaction is going to get more immersive, more experiential, this is going to open up a lot of opportunities. So for what's next is we've decided that we're going to do just simply organize ourselves and implement and appoint a metaverse business unit director.
MBU director?
MBU director, go for it.
Metaverse Business Unit Director. So what does a Metaverse Business Unit mean in practice?
So everything that's online related, everything that's digital related, and everything that's going to be about the metaverse. But for example, the video game would have been under that scope. So those are, I think, because of the creative vision we have, the mindset we have, but it's more, and you said, was it a marketing coup? Okay, I don't think so. I think it's more to say, we need to set ourselves for success and for the future, to be ready to anticipate the change as opposed to process the change when it's just too late and you're like, oh, what am I going to do? And I think Kering has that power to let us do those kind of things, structure ourselves, and when it gets to innovation, François-Henri Pinault was the one to push me in that direction and say, go for it. Innovation is at the center of Balenciaga, and it was a good move. So I'm happy we're doing this.
That's very interesting, because I think it kind of changes the idea of the creative side as well. And you said, it was Demna's idea to do Fortnite. It was Demna's idea to create the video game. It's like, if this metaverse phenomenon becomes a real thing, it's going to change the expectations on the creative people in our industry as well, in terms of how they can take a brand like Balenciaga and stretch it into virtual spaces, which is like a whole different kind of design process, because the aesthetics, as I've learned in the metaverse, are completely different from like the aesthetics that we're all used to here. So
yes, and also from a brand standpoint, Imran, but also from a community, internal community standpoint. Are we going to do boardroom meeting, or is this going to be in the metaverse soon? This I don't know. But what I can say is we better be ready. And because we are the platform we are, it makes sense that we get onto that next journey.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to come here and doing the isolation last night, because it really means a lot. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Everyone, join me in thanking you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you.
So now it's time to share some progress on some key topics that we have been following at Voices since its inception in 2016. Our next speaker is a Voices alumna who returns to Voices after her debut here in 2017. She is undoubtedly one of the most compelling speakers in Voices history, speaking on the industry's most urgent topic, as we heard from both Dame Vivienne Westwood and Dame Vivian Hunt earlier today. In 2005, Dame Ellen MacArthur made history on the open seas by becoming the fastest person to ever sail solo, non-stop, around the world in just over 70 days. 2 years later, she came here to Voices with a call to action for our industry to become more circular. Here's a flashback.
But when I talked to people about solutions, the solutions were about using less. The solutions were making a garment with less material, making a car with less material, using a little bit less energy to do that. And of course, if you have finite materials, you are very careful with how you use them, once you realize that fact. But just using less is not a solution. It buys you time. What fascinated me was, what does success look like for the global economy? If we've got finite resources and we're using them up, that's not really very sexy. What actually really could work? And it was through talking to more experts, scientists, CEOs, as many people as I could, that the pin began to drop. What if we could build that economy in a circular rather than linear way? Linear takes something out of the ground, makes something out of it, throw it away. Circular, When you design that product, you take that material and you design that product to fit within a cycle.
But how do we do that? It's much easier said than done. Today, here at Voices, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is launching its first book, Circular Design for Fashion. The book aims to inspire designers to adopt circular design in their day-to-day work. Ellen is here to give us an honest take on how fashion is doing on its journey towards circularity and to learn why good design is circular design. Please welcome Ellen MacArthur and BOF's London editor and our own resident sustainability expert, Sarah Kent.
Thank you for being here, Ellen. I think it's testimony to how impressive you are that when you were introduced, I think someone behind me actually gasped. I wanted to start, obviously, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is launching its book on circular design, and you gave a little teaser in that video of what circularity really means. But I've been covering sustainability in this industry for some time now, and I know we throw around these very big words that mean very big things, and we don't drill into what it really means. And that's important that we understand what we're talking about. So I wondered if you could just lay down what fashion is really aiming for here.
Circular design is about 3 principles. The first principle is to eliminate waste and pollution through design. The second is to circulate products and materials for as long as possible. And then the third is to regenerate natural systems. If you do that all running on renewable energy, you effectively build a fashion economy, a technology economy, an automotive economy, which can really run in the long term. It's a completely different approach, and it all begins with design. Design of the business models, design of the product, design of the way the product flows through the system. It's all really about design right from the outset.
And just to contextualize what this could mean, when you talk about how we could run this on green energy, what is the impact in terms of tackling the crisis that I think Imran laid out at the start of today as being the biggest one facing us, the climate crisis? How important is this?
Well, when you look at some of the statistics, it's quite surprising. When we talk about climate, we hear a lot of conversation around energy. The switch to renewable energy is vital, but actually the way the economy functions, the way we make and use things, including food, that's responsible for 45% of all GHG emissions and over 90% of biodiversity loss, just because of the way we do things. So if you change the way we do things, you change the way the economy functions to enable all the users, I love the word user, we use that as well, the users, the actors within the economy, to make the economy work for you so that you have designed out waste. There is no waste, there's no pollution. Products cycle for as long as they need to, and then they feed back into the system. And then you regenerate natural systems. Then actually, through the way the economy functions, you're making the world a better place. And it's not just the energy question. It's actually how the economy functions. And that's really fascinating. Today, our economy is so wasteful, and yet we're innovative and creative. And you see the presentations here, and you think, we can do anything. This is, we have this world of opportunity. We have digital. We can share in seconds. Why are we making stuff that becomes waste when we have finite materials? And then you put that in line with the statistics around GHG emissions from the way we make and use things. It's crazy. We can do so much better with this if we have that goal.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the great ironies of the fashion industry. In particular, as you say, it's such a creative industry.
Absolutely.
Has an opportunity to take such a creative stance to find solutions, and yet the waste in this industry, as Dame Vivian Hunt outlined yesterday, I think if I'm remembering the statistics she used correctly, 12% of all fibers just never used, completely wasteful. So the scale of opportunity here in terms of transforming the industry, how much of a difference to fashion could we make?
Oh, we've just done a study on circular business models, which is how the products fit within the economy, how they can cycle within the economy. Not just the design and the materials, but this is actually the business model. And we reckon up by 2030, $700 billion worth of economic opportunity, and 23% of the global fashion market. When you see companies like the Real Real and Rent the Runway coming from nowhere and grasping a sector of the market that really wasn't there, and billion-dollar businesses in a heartbeat, really, when you look at the timeline, it's really interesting to see. And I think this conversation around the users and the way that the fashion industry interacts with their customers or their users or the participants within it, I think there's some really big opportunities here. Because when you look at that circular economy and you look at cycling those products and how those products fit, this can become a relationship with an organization, a company that makes the products. This isn't just about the design of the product, but it's also so important how that product relates to the user, how that product fits back within the system. There's no point in building the perfect circular item of clothing if once it gets to the end of its useful life, you can't do anything with it, or the person who ends up with it doesn't know the materials.
And it's been really, really interesting to see, particularly during the pandemic, how those business models like rental and resale have begun to take off more. But there was a lot of hesitancy within the industry towards these business models when they first came onto the scene, particularly at the luxury end of the spectrum. There was a lot of skepticism, a lot of concern. Why do you think that was? And do you think we've got past that barrier?
I think, if you're in the traditional linear system, which really we've inherited since the Industrial Revolution, where the way you make your profits is to take a material, turn it into something, and sell it. I mean, one of my earliest conversations was in the automotive sector. This was nearly 10 years ago, where raw material prices had gone up by 500 million euros in 12 months. Half the operating profits wiped away like that. And that business had no control over it. That's because they're tied to that linear system, and you only make money when you sell stuff. That's now transforming in automotive as it's transforming in fashion, as we realize actually we need to decouple our economic growth from the use of finite resources. We need to feed those resources into a system so they become not virgin resources, but they're recycled materials. How do you do that? Well, you can do that through design, through the cycling of materials, but through different business models, access over ownership. This is all changing, and digital makes this happen. That's why the digital transformation is so vital to bringing this all to life.
So get on board or miss out.
But it's really interesting because I was at COP last month and I sat on a panel with Philip Hildebrand, who's the #2 in BlackRock. If anybody knows about global investment, it's him. And he was challenged by the moderator saying, but this is about sacrifice. This transition is going to cost. This is down to us as the users, the consumers, whatever you want to call them. We're going to pay for this. And he just said, do you know what? He said, if we continue with business as usual, GDP goes down by 25% in the next 2 decades. Business as usual doesn't work. It's not the solution. And I think that's where we need to begin the process from, is realizing that actually carrying on as we are is not a solution. It's never going to work. We have a growing world population. We have finite resources. We have the climate crisis. We have to change the system. Can't we change the system from linear to circular so it works for us, so consumers make the world a better place through their choices, through the fact that the cotton that they're buying is grown in a regenerative way and it's enhancing biodiversity and it's making the topsoil richer, not poorer. Because at the moment, we're locked in a race to the bottom. And that's about making a product with a little bit less for a little bit cheaper so people can buy it a little bit cheaper. And you're kind of racing down. How can we make a bit more profit from this? This turns all of that on its head. This is a race to the top. This is to build better, to design better, to change the system, to enable access over ownership, to let people have these products and participate in the solution, not feel like every time they're making a choice, they're actually part of the problem. And that's why the system has to change. And systemic change within the fashion industry, and the automotive industry, and the plastic packaging industry, it has to be the entire system shifting towards that regenerative model.
Let's talk a little bit about our basic instincts as human beings here, though, as well. Because what we're seeing, interestingly, in fashion is as companies test out things like rental and resale, which is very exciting and potentially transformative, is you're also seeing companies spot an opportunity to drive more consumption. Mm-hmm. So, come to my resale site, get a voucher to buy new things on my other site. So do we run the risk of being in a position where we have this opportunity transform, but because there is a higher value near term, by doing it in a way that doesn't absolutely shift the system, we don't take advantage. Problem. Exactly.
There's always a risk, but what we're beginning to see, and we see this in the fashion sector beginning, but there are some fascinating things going on in other sectors, like in faster moving consumer goods, food production. We're beginning to see some of the biggest food retailers in the world, producers of product, compete over nature positive food. Now imagine that when you walk into a supermarket. At the moment we're thinking, if you're a conscious individual and you can afford the choice, because not everyone can, you're trying to make an informed decision with not a lot of data. What do you buy? What do you choose? if the companies involved in that sector are then competing over nature-positive food, you know that what you're buying is making the world a better place. And you don't have to understand circularity or the circular economy to do that. This is nature-positive. This enhances biodiversity. This builds up the natural capital in farmland. This is a good thing. I think in the fashion industry, we're going to see something similar. We know business as usual doesn't work. We know we need to reinvent the system. It's not just about different business models and access over ownership. It's the design of the products that are sold. You know, we're not going to have access over ownership for underwear. You know, there are products that won't work for. We have a whole range of things. There are some really high-value items, like things that I've been given by my parents. I'm going to keep those forever. They're incredibly valuable to me. But then you also have the things that just quite frankly aren't, or technology that has to cycle because technology moves on. All of these opportunities need to fit within a system and need to be correctly designed. So when that thing that you won't rent and you actually have to buy or access in a different way, when that goes back into the system, it's designed for that system.
And what does that mean, correctly designed? What is a product that is designed for a circular model?
Well, it's interesting. We ran a big project on the jeans redesign,
right?
Getting together the biggest jeans manufacturers in the world and saying, what do circular jeans look like and how do you make this happen? You know, what do you put in them? What level of quality do you have to look at when you grow the cotton in the first place? How do you extract the material and make sure that when those jeans, if they're not resold or repaired, reach the end of their life, that they can be fed back into the system? And that's really hard, and it's actually very rare to get the biggest competitors, and this has been mentioned at this conference. We need to work together to make this happen. This is not a question of competing. You know, 100 innovations in 100 directions doesn't add up to a solution. You need to work out what success looks like for that, for the, you know, the jeans industry or for the fashion industry, and then orientate everybody towards it so that every step takes you one step closer to that goal, and we know we can identify what that goal looks like. And that's where the circular design comes in, looking at what is circular design. Well, it's making sure you can take the materials out of those products, you can repair the garments, you can keep them in the system, but if it's something that can't stay in the system, then make sure it fits within the system when it gets to the end of its life. Make sure there's a system there that enables that product to be fed back into the system. Because there's no point in designing a circular T-shirt if it just ends up in landfill. You know, 87% of textiles ends up incinerated or landfill, and only 1% currently globally gets recycled into the same quality material. I mean, the statistics are really shocking. So we can do better than that. We can build products that can fit within a cycle, and we won't always get it right. But that goal gives the direction of travel, which is so important.
Were you surprised when you started digging into this about the complexity involved in figuring out how to make a circular garment?
It is incredibly complex. And it's interesting, you need the entire value chain in the room. This is not just a design question. It's obviously a design question, but it's everything that sits around that. And everyone needs to get their heads in the room to get their heads around it. And then you actually need to do it to learn more about it as you put everything in process. And in a way, it sounds crazy to say, but to design a circular pair of jeans is fairly straightforward because the criteria is clear. But then when you look at the fashion industry, this is not about one product in one territory. It's about multiple products in multiple territories. And different countries have different recovery systems for garments. So if you design that perfect circular garment, how do you guarantee it fits back into that system so the cotton is, you know, ultimately the very end of its life, you know, biodegraded and put back on agricultural farmland? How do you build that? And that's different everywhere. So it's a very culturally specific as well as design-orientated and value chain conversation.
And so it's about taking a really holistic point of view at the point of design. And I know that you and the Elle MacArthur Foundation consulted when you were putting together the circular design, but did you get pushback from designers in saying, you know, this isn't realistic, this is too restrictive, you're telling us how we should design, it's not creative?
I would say that's not the vibe at all. I think there was, and it's really interesting, genuine excitement to be part of the solution, but from a real, it's a book for creatives, from a real creativity perspective. And there's some really interesting points of view in the book about values. You know, do you have pride in a designer at making multiple garments that are sold multiple times that, you know, 87% of which you know are going to be landfilled or incinerated? Or is there pride in building something that people value, that is valuable? And even if it's, you know, underwear, that underwear at the end of its life still has a value, because today it doesn't. You know, things are made to be worn and then they're not really valuable at all. So they end up being incinerated or landfilled. I mean, that's what happens to things that don't have value. So I think there's a real excitement around being part of the opportunity, and I think also the opening of the conversation from the creatives in the design space to the creatives in the marketing space, in the online space, in the communication space. You know, how are we going to communicate circular business models? What's the message? And that's a fascinating challenge to have and an opportunity to seize, to be ahead of the game and to think of the future, because as we know, business as usual can't run, so we need to be creative as to how we build that future economy.
And what are the barriers that we're facing here? You know, $700 billion opportunity, 23% of the market potentially by 2030. What is it going to take to get there?
Well, mindset change. You know, you said yourself, Sarah, that some people resist this, some people are more up for this, some people realize they may actually do this themselves. You may have a service with a luxury goods provider whereby you don't actually own what you're wearing at all and you're just clothed by them, like the stars are. Why not? You know, why not everybody do that? There are certain items you wouldn't do that with for, but actually the majority, absolutely you can. And we've, you know, seen companies appear and provide this. So I think there's a massive opportunity there, and there's an opportunity to communicate in a different way. I'd say some of the barriers around design, you know, we don't have all the answers around design. It's the same with plastic packaging, it's the same with automotive. You know, how do you design this in a different way? Some of the challenges sit with material science, but then the opportunities sit there too. And you know, we work a huge amount in education globally with universities around the world, and it's fascinating looking at new materials. The material science, innovation, making materials that fit within a system, you're being part of the solution, and it's all about innovation and creativity. So for me, there are barriers, and they sit in different areas. You know, the financing, if you're renting your clothing or providing it as a service, how does that sit on the books? How are you invested? But then the other side of that is that there is, you know, again, to go back to the conversation with BlackRock and about the finance industry, the money's there. The money's there to be invested, but it needs to be connected to the right investments. And this isn't a conversation about the CSR part of the business. This isn't a conversation about you know, environmental and social governance. This is a conversation about how they're vital. But this is a conversation about the industry and how the industry functions and how that industry plays a role in the switch from linear to circular. And that's not clear, and that's not measured very clearly yet, but the money's there waiting to back it up. So the communication of how this will unfold is really, really interesting.
And I think that is a really interesting barrier to talk about, because when I talk to people in the industry about this, there's a lot of excitement about it. There's a lot of experimentation. There are a lot of pilot projects. There's not much scaling. And there's a lot of challenges still in play around how you figure out getting products back to recycle them, what the infrastructure is, who is meant to put that in place. As you said, changes from country to country.
Yeah.
The industry can't do this alone. Who does it need to be coordinating with? And how quickly do we all need to get our acts together?
I think that's a really good question. And I think what's interesting is the industry, from our perspective and the work we've done with, you know, the players and organisations we work with, there's a real feeling that the system has to change, that the fashion industry has to change. Not just a feeling, you know, there are pilot projects in place, such as Wear Next in New York, where we work with New York State to put a system together so the clothing could feed back in as a pilot, as a trial to see how do we get this clothing back? How do we build this system that can cycle? But because it is so different in all the different territories, and that really is a channel. But the most important point comes back to the fact that if some of the biggest players in the world, and we've seen this and done this with plastic packaging globally, we've got 20% of the global plastic packaging industry signed up to a global commitment with UNEP, which is now changing policy. If the biggest players in the world say, do you know what, this is what success looks for our industry, you know, with the jeans or with the fashion industry as a whole, which is a really big goal, but if that direction of travel is fixed, that makes it so much easier for policymakers to change.
So what should everyone in this room be getting together to ask for?
Absolutely. A circular economy for fashion based on 3 principles: that regenerates natural systems, that designs out waste and pollution, and keeps products and materials in use. If you run that on renewable energy, we have a fashion industry that can run forever and build the most beautiful things because they sit within a system that ultimately make the world a better place. What an amazing place to get to.
I feel like there is no more to say on this. Thank you so much. What an amazing moment to leave it on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. That was amazing, as always. Thank you, Sarah. For a deeper dive into circular design, one of our 10 core themes in the State of Fashion 2022, a greater focus on circular textiles is necessary next year, with systems like closed-loop recycling maturing and beginning to be rolled out at scale. You can read our report to find out more how fashion companies can tap into circularity to reduce their environmental impact. Now, on to an exciting announcement. Here at Voices, we have been discussing animal rights in fashion for several years now. Our next speaker, PJ Smith, has quietly facilitated radical mindset shifts around anti-fur policies all over the fashion industry. When he spoke here in 2017, Gucci had just announced its landmark anti-fur policy. Since then, Valentino, Versace, Canada Goose, Neiman Marcus, Farfetch, Prada, Chanel, Oscar de la Renta, Selfridges, Kering, and all of its brands, and many, many others are now fur-free. And as Ellen was just saying, when big players take action, policy often follows. So these corporate policies are leading to public policies. California became the first US state to ban the sale of fur in October 2019. Earlier this year, Israel became the first country to end fur sales. And Norway, which was once the world's largest producer of fur, is banning fur farming starting in 2025. But the problem is, fashion imagery is still awash with fur, which in turn fuels consumer demand. So today, I'm pleased to invite PJ back here on stage with Valeria Bacello-Lopez, Senior Vice President and International Director of Elle, for a major announcement on how they plan to change that. Please welcome PJ and Valeria. So PJ, I want to start with you. I want you to tell me, since you were on this very stage in 2017, how have you seen the fashion industry, beyond the kind of, anti-fur policies that have come in place, how have the discussions that you have with big brands in the fashion industry, how has that changed when it comes to animal rights?
It's all about the consumer, and it's all about innovation at this point. And so we now have plenty of evidence that shows that consumers care about animal welfare more than all other priorities. And that's leading to companies seeing this, the marketing potential behind going fur-free. And so it's becoming a lot easier to work with companies when you can point to, this is the way that things are changing. Gen Z consumers are moving this direction, and you're either going to be left behind or you're going to be a leader on these issues. And so that is, and then the policy thing. So when you see California banning fur sales in 2019, the policy goes into effect in 2023. A lot of these corporate policies that are going to be happening, Canada Goose, Neiman Marcus, January 1st, 2023. So we know that the policy, this public policy is leading to corporate change. And that corporate change was leading to public policy, as you mentioned. So this is all also driving innovation, where you see these alternatives becoming better and better and better, not just for animals, not just better in quality, but better in sustainability as well. Stella McCartney's Koba fur is actually bio-based, it's corn-based, and it's just gonna get better and better. So it's really exciting times, and I think there's gonna be a lot more happening.
Okay. Valeria, we met on a Zoom call a few months ago, and you were starting a process, and you were in the middle of that process. And I asked you at the time, do you think you're gonna make it happen? And you said, I think so, but I'm not sure how many. Can you tell us today what you are announcing on behalf of Elle magazine globally about a new anti-fur policy?
Well, first I would say that since its launch in 1945, Elle has always been engaged has always been an actor of the evolution of the society, and since many years at Elle, we've been engaged towards environment and sustainability through regular features and special issues. And today we think animal fur is no longer in line with our values, and that it's time to take a stand on the critical issues of protecting and caring for the environment and animals and rejecting animal cruelty. Thus, I am very excited to announce that Elle pledges to go for free and to disallow editorial content and advertisement that promote animal fur, and this with the guidelines of the Fur Free Alliance. So this includes animal fur in our editorial, from fashion productions to features to images from agencies, street style or runaways, as well as the depiction of animal fur in advertisement or brand content, this for print and digital. To that end, and with the assistance of Paige from the Humane Society organization, we created a dedicated charter to be signed by the editions, but on editorial and advertising, and I am very proud to say that the whole network signed.
45 editions,
yes,
right?
That is 45 editions around the world. And it was, maybe I will come back after, but it was a process. And you know, even 2 weeks ago, it was still on process.
I remember when it was 39, and and we were really
and
wondering.
every day.
We were wondering about certain countries where fur is more part of the culture. You know, I come from Canada, where
Well, Canada signed very early.
They did, but Russia and other countries,
or Denmark,
or
Ukraine.
How did you end up getting the last few to come on board? What was it that you think finally convinced them that this is time?
Well, I think anyway the world has changed. You know, our readers have changed, and it's a new era. So this is a course of history anyway. So, and what is also what I would like to say is that, yes, it's because there were very different culture and very different markets. So as you can see, we are from China, Russia, France, Thailand, Turkey, etc. So for 13 of these editions, it's already effective. For 20 of them, it will be the first gen next month. And for the others, it will be the first gen on 2023. And what is important is that we will also add, of course, this charter to every new contract, publishing contract, and every renewal of agreement.
Okay, well, that is absolutely impressive accomplishment to get everyone aligned. It's like fashion diplomacy. So congratulations on that announcement. PJ, my question is, okay, last time you were here, you wanted the industry to move away from fur. I think, clearly there's been a massive movement. When you got on stage here last time, you also talked about your love for animals from a very, very young age. So I want to know, what do you think is next in this journey that you're on and trying to convince our industry that treating animals fairly is not a moral responsibility? Where should we go from here?
It's a good question. And first, I think we need to close out the fur industry, close out the fur trade. And that's going to happen with this public policy, as I said. And I mean, the UK right now is considering banning fur sales and imports. So that's going to be step one, creating public policy around the world. What's naturally happening, though, is as so many of these companies are going fur-free, a lot of them are coming and saying, what's next? We want to be competitive, and we know that consumers care about animal welfare. And that's kind of where exotic skins are being part of that conversation now because of traceability issues, because animal cruelty issues. But then it's innovation, where we're growing leather out of mushrooms. And we have these alternatives that it's just getting better and better. And so I think it's going to be this constant innovation that's happening. There's finally being money being invested into these alternatives. And it's really exciting. So I think we're going to see exotic skins being more banned. And then I think the innovation and the environmental impact of leather and those sort of things are just going to naturally be replaced by alternatives.
Okay, yesterday, I happened to get a press release from the Armani Group that they announced that they're stopping the use of Angora wool. Is that something we should be thinking about as well? I mean, it came as a complete surprise to me in my inbox yesterday. I don't know the story around Angora, but is that something that the industry needs to think about as well?
For sure. I mean, it's across the board. Whenever you're going to source animal products, mass produce it, there's going to be cruelty involved with that, and Angora is the same. So again, I think a lot of these policies are going to be Angora, cashmere. It's going to start looking at some of these supply chains, and then the companies have to say, do I want to be associated with this risk? Be it climate change, be it animal cruelty. So I think it's going to be fine-tuning these policies, but it started with fur. Okay. A lot of these companies didn't even have policies before they started with a fur policy, and now it's just about adding on to it.
Okay. Well, PJ, you are a true force of nature, because to get the fashion industry to change is an incredibly hard thing to do, and I just want to congratulate you both and congratulate Valeria as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for offering and agreeing to make this announcement here at Voices.
Thank you.
We also have one message from a former Voices speaker who was here in 2019, who was not able to be here today, but he wanted us to share this video. His name is Alexei Lubomirsky. He was here on stage actually asking the industry to stop working with fur, leather, and exotic skins. He couldn't be here today, but he has a message he wants to share, so we'll just play that.
Hi there, it's Alexei Lubomirsky here. I hope you're all well, safe, and healthy. I just wanted to pop in and say hello, and also to say a huge congratulations to Elle magazines for making this amazing declaration that they will no longer be supporting fur in their magazines. A huge thank you to Valeria from Elle, and also to PJ Smith from Humane Society, who have been working tirelessly to come up with this amazing outcome. This is a conversation that me and PJ Smith had probably about 3 years ago about how we could make the biggest shift possible in the magazine world. As I've mentioned before, actually on this stage, that with my movement Creative for Change, where I was asking people in the fashion industry to drop the use of fur in their creative output, I came up with a lot of some pushback, because photographers and stylists said that they would stop using fur in their creative output when the magazines stopped promoting it. The magazines said that they would stop promoting it when the designers stopped making it, and the designers stopped making it, which said they would stop making it when the public no longer demanded it. But when you look at the cycle, it comes down to the people who make these items desirable, and that's photographers, stylists, magazines. We're the ones who put them in the pages on billboards and make these things aspirational, and therefore the public desire them, and then they go out and buy them. So for Elle to be able to say that they will no longer be promoting fur in their magazines worldwide is such a huge announcement, because it sends out ripples into the world that will affect not only the customers and the buying customers, but also brands and designers as well. So it is a massive step in the right direction, and I'm so excited to be part of it. I think we all like to think of ourselves as good and kind human beings, and I would like to believe that most of us are good and kind human beings. But with today's technology, we can no longer feign ignorance about how these products are made. All you have to do is take your phone out of your pocket and ask how fur is produced, and you will come up with a load of videos, a load of articles. Now, with this knowledge comes the responsibility for us creatives to make conscious and ethical choices and decisions with our creative output. And I think that Elle today have made a massive decision in the right direction. And again, I just want to say thank you to Valeria and also to PJ for really putting in the work for making this come to fruition. So thank you very much to everybody there. Congratulations to Elle, and I look forward to seeing you all in the flesh soon.
As we heard from Cedric earlier, the 90s are back. And one of the designers whose collections shaped that decade was Tommy Hilfiger, who earlier this week was the recipient of the Outstanding Achievement Award at the Fashion Awards 2021. Tommy bridged the divide between mainstream fashion and hip-hop culture and fell into some of the industry's first collaborations, something that has now taken fashion by storm. Since then, the business stakes of collaboration may have risen and become a business model in their own right, but it is more crucial than ever that collaborations are authentic partnerships, not simply commercial transactions. Tommy will be taking the stage today with 3 cultural leaders to discuss his recent collaborations with them, warts and all. Actor, model, and activist India Moore, former model and another returning Voices speaker, Halima Aden, and finally, the model and advocate, Jillian Mercado. Along with our editor-at-large, Tim Blanks, they will discuss how brands can create authentic collaborations that stand the test of time. But first, let's have a little look at where it all began.
We started calling it People's Place. When we opened on the main floor, we really had a number of different shops within a store. We had a cafe. It was a real hangout. We were creating a lifestyle. I wish I could actually go back in time and show you what it really looked like during the heydays. American sportswear is very varsity-oriented. And if you look at the Ivy League schools and the collegiate uniforms, you look at varsity jackets, you look at letter sweaters, you look at the sports teams and what they're wearing. And my idea was to take that authenticity and plant it inside of Tommy Hilfiger. Where it all began. This is the first fashion show we ever did. It was all about fashion and music. Not much has changed. We have, I would say, ventured into things that were unexpected. Like the day my brother Andy introduced me to Britney Spears. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know who Britney Spears was. He said, we should use her as our Tommy girl for the jeans campaign. When we met Beyonce and Destiny's Child, we asked them to play music for a runway fashion show at Macy's. Nobody knew who she was or who they were, but it was spontaneity that brought us that. And it was always unexpected.
Welcome, everybody. Tommy, we start with you because we were talking about authenticity and collaboration last night. And I think these 2 words have become so important over the last 2 years. And we talked about authenticity for you and for me, starts with our love of music, which I think comes across very strongly there. So could you just tell us a little bit about what those 2 words have meant for you in your career?
When I was a teen, I became obsessed with rock music. And this is when the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were coming to America. Jimi Hendrix was touring. The Four Tops were playing concerts. And I just became obsessed with music. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be a musician. But I found I was tone deaf. I couldn't play. And you wouldn't want to hear me sing. So I decided I wanted to look like the musicians. And at that time, the musicians had long hair. They wore bell-bottoms, fringe vests, like cool hippie type clothing. And I started wearing that type of clothing. And my friends at school wanted to know where I was getting my clothes. And I was getting my clothes from the streets of New York City, which was about 5 hours driving from my home. So I took my Volkswagen. I drove to New York City with $150. I loaded 20 pairs of bell-bottom jeans into the trunk of the car, brought the car back to my school parking lot. I sold the jeans. And then I opened a shop called people's place because I wanted it to be for the people. Anybody who liked fashion and music. Then I opened record shops, and I expanded it into more of a community and sort of a lifestyle type of retail event. And during that time, I thought, I think I want to build my own brand. And I told my family and friends, and they said, you could never do that. And I said, no, I think I could do it. And I thought that if I could hire seamstresses, they could take my ideas, and I could begin to make clothes and sell the clothes in my stores, which I did. And they became successful. So I said, okay, I'm building my own brand. And in 1985, 36 years ago, we launched Tommy Hilfiger. And it was sort of preppy, all-American, cool. I didn't want it to look like Brooks Brothers or Ralph Lauren. I thought it was very uptight and snobby and aristocratic looking. I wanted it to be really cool, oversized, and relaxed. Then the hip-hop kids on the streets of New York started embracing my brand when I started doing the flag and big logos, and nobody knew what streetwear was. When I told the retailers I had a streetwear collection, they were like, what? And yeah, and like hip-hop kids are wearing it and rappers are wearing it. What? They didn't even understand it. They didn't even know what rap or hip-hop was. But the rappers were rapping about my clothes in their songs, and all of a sudden the brand exploded. And then I started dressing Snoop Dogg, P. Diddy. I helped Russell Simmons and Sean John Combs start their businesses. I became close to people like Jay-Z, who had Rockaware, and they started competing with me. And they created their own look, which was very similar to mine. It was oversized, it was big logos, it was relaxed. And it was really the beginning of streetwear. So I guess you could say it's authentic.
There was a reciprocity there,
yeah,
wasn't there, between you and the hip-hoppers and the rappers who were wearing your clothes. Now, I feel that wasn't completely clear to people at the time. I feel like there was a sort of moment where people thought you were appropriating their style, and it wasn't clear to them that actually it was really mutual admiration in that case.
It was, and you know, part of it came from the way I was designing. The way I was designing the clothes was suited for what they wanted, because they wanted way oversized, and they wanted big logos. And when I first started showing the stores big logos, they said, my customers don't want logos. Bloomingdale's, people like that said, we could never sell logos. And I said, just try. So we put a few different pieces in. Snoop Dogg wore a big logo on Saturday Night Live, and people all of a sudden, young people, embraced big logos, baggy, oversized streetwear. And now, of course, Gucci, Balenciaga, Dior, and all the luxury brands are doing streetwear. So I'm very proud I started it, and I'm very proud that I had something to do with it. But I think that it's here to stay because it's casual and comfortable.
Now, everyone else here, India, how did you become aware of Tommy?
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, like Tommy Hilfiger was just a regular, like when I say regular, not average, but regular as in like frequently occurring, was just like a thing that it was just like regular, like Tommy Hilfiger. You don't have Tommy Hilfiger in your closet? Like, what you doing? What kind of closet you got? So it was just that was the culture. And I remember, you know, me growing up, I'm about to be 27 soon. And there was something that you asked Tommy that I really thought about that I just want to respond to because it was a thought that I had. Listening to everyone share their experiences around fashion and their contributions. but that there's a difference between taking from people's culture and selling it to other people, and being inspired by someone's culture and making things for them and with them in mind. And that's exactly what Tommy Hilfiger did. And I think that a lot of other fashion brands have gone in the opposite direction, you know, and when we have these conversations about cultural appropriation, what we're talking about is seeing you know, like, and then we talk about diversity, you know, it goes back to the conversation that we were having around the ways that diversity feels like often, when people talk about it, it feels like a clubhouse that Black and brown people are being invited to. And it's weird, right? Because a lot of the times we're looking at these houses and we're like, we built them, you know, and it's also decorated with our shit, you know? Excuse my language. But it's also decorated with our culture. And then so that's not what's happening, you know? Tommy Hilfiger created a space, you know, in art that reflects people who buy his work back to them. And I think that's what fashion needs to be more of.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see you.
Thank you.
Now, you're absolutely right, because the notion of performative authenticity has been a little bit of a, you know, there's been a lot of that, actually.
You don't have to. You can just be yourself, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, just be yourself and bring that to what you create.
But
like,
I mean,
we're trying to find out how to be authentic in these conversations that we're having.
But the word itself has been stretched. Its application's been stretched. So sometimes the authentic is exactly the opposite when people are talking about the authentic. But, you know, we talked about the word, we mentioned the word platform earlier today, and it feels to me like Tommy Hilfiger has become a platform. We have three very distinct voices here who have been able to speak through, you know, on the platform of Tommy Hilfiger. I mean, what's it been like for you, Alima?
It's been a dream. I mean, not only is Tommy so inspirational, but I have a quick story to tell you guys. So my agency and stuff, like, we sat down and I was able to do, because I was the first hijab wearing model, and so I was able to do New York Fashion Week, Milan, London, and Paris was the only market where I was never invited. And you know, France is also, they banned the burkini, they banned the hijab in certain places. And so when I got the call, I will never forget, Tommy was the first and probably only designer to invite me to Paris Fashion Week. And that was such a huge moment for the Muslim community, for other fellow hijab-wearing girls to see me on your runway and to be part of Paris Fashion Week, which I thought would never happen. I mean, it was incredible. And I remember another time where I got to do Sports Illustrated, and he actually custom made me a burkini. And that was another moment where it was like, okay, the burkini is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And if an iconic American designer could have me like in a burkini, why can't you go to a public beach and wear your burkini? You know, swimsuit this, 2-piece here, 1-piece here, burkini. I feel like people should not police our bodies, and it's that simple. So Tommy holds a very special place in my heart.
Tommy, tell me about this sense of mission.
I'm 70 years old now. When I was 18, I created People's Place for the people, to welcome everyone. And I've always lived by that. Now, I want to waste nothing and welcome all. But the welcoming all isn't something new, because inclusiveness and diversity in companies is a thing today. I started mentoring young, talented people of color because they didn't have mentors and they didn't have anyone to look up to. They didn't know how to actually open the doors and see how things were done. I've embraced young people to show them the way, and I wanted to give them opportunity that they wouldn't ordinarily have. BIPOC people. And Romeo Hunt was one we recently did, which was very successful, and he had nothing. He had a few outerwear pieces and a few dresses, but didn't have the money to buy the fabric, didn't have the money to do a fashion show, had big ideas, couldn't get an appointment with a store to sell them the clothes. So we unlocked the doors for him. Now he's becoming a known brand, and we put him on a springboard. We collabed together recently with a number of different people, but with India, we did a very successful collab. We make clothes for people with special needs. That's very real and authentic. I have children with special needs, and I've watched them struggle with buttoning buttons and zipping zippers and getting into clothes. They want to look like everyone else. So I created an adaptive clothing line, and initially it was for children, and now it's for everyone. I really believe that if we can do what we're doing, others can see what we're doing and follow, other companies. I mean, a lot of corporations today are hiring chief diversity officers to make sure that they have enough black people or transgender or Muslim people or women at the table. I mean, that is something that just came natural to me from the very, very beginning. And it's not because it's a trend today that we're all of a sudden doing it.
That's what I mean about the performative aspect of this. I mean, does that irritate you when you see that happening?
It irritates me to see other companies be so white, because it makes me think that people are looking at me, because I'm white, as one of those. And obviously my advertising shows that I'm not, and I could talk to people and tell them I'm not, but you know, I probably, to a lot of people, look like one of those. And that really, it gets me very, very, very upset when I see these large companies not opening doors for the world.
It's kind of the story of the Trojan horse in a way, isn't it? Do you feel that you have been able, because you look like one of those, you've been able to insert a new value system?
Yeah, and by the way, I know I can get many people on the phone to help others. For instance, when Romeo Hunt came along, he didn't know how to get in touch with Macy's or Bloomingdale's or Saks Fifth Avenue or any of these people. And I said, oh, let me just call them and introduce you. And it was nothing. It was a phone call for me. But it changed his world. And there are a lot of stories like that with a lot of people who've come into our family. I won't go into, but everybody can do that. Every corporation can do that. It doesn't cost a lot. It's basically opening a generous heart and saying, I want to help somehow.
You know, the sustainability is a lot more than just resources. It's also human, you know, human sustainability. I want to know, Gillian, what your experience has been like with Hilfiger.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said changing the world, because for me personally, it definitely changed my world, if I may speak honestly. I think the most pivotal moment in my life was realizing at the age of like 12 or 13, New York City girl, born and bred, realizing how the world perceived me and how I was undervalued or not valued whatsoever. And I used to hoard magazines when I was little, fashion magazines, so much so that my Dominican mom made me throw them all out one day, and that was the saddest time in my life. But for me, I never saw myself, you know, being a part of. It was a fantasy world for me, you know, and to have that realization and having the opportunity to work with you and knowing that you see here and are making that change yourself because of the place and power that you know that you have has not only changed my emotional and mental state to feel valued in this world, but to thousands and millions of people who have disabilities around this world, invisible or physical, gives that value, you know? And every day you can wake up saying that somebody out there sees me and thinks that I'm worth being in this world. I get emotional. I got a good makeup on. I can't. Yeah. It really does, you know, because, I mean, if I may add, we're all going to be in that state. Hopefully we all want to live, you know, till 100 or 90. Well, Betty White is like 100 now, you know? And we all will have a disability of some sort or way, you know? And I would want for people to feel valued even at that age, you know? So the fact that people like myself at that young age didn't feel valued, it's not a good place to be. So with the adaptive line, we can get a head start on that. And I hope that other industries and brands realize that how crucial and important it is, because it's 1 out of 5 people who have it. So there's people around here who have it, you know? And I think that's the most beautiful, you know, to have that place in power, to say, I'm gonna help you because I see you and I hear you, and not only am I understanding the value that you have, I can just call Macy's and hello. So.
With the weight of that brand, or the weight of your brand, how did things change for the three of you after you'd done your collaboration with Tommy?
Well, thank you, Tommy, again for allowing me to participate in a collaboration of the, you know, and it's a big deal of the magnitude that it was for me. I definitely, I'm not a designer. I'm an artist, and I was a trans kid before, you know, and I was a trans child who didn't, you know, understand, who didn't see gender in clothes. I didn't associate bodies to clothing when I was a child, and I think a lot of us didn't when we were children, and then we unlearned that through trauma. You know, some of us are beaten, other children are beaten out of that level of curiosity or just playing with clothes, right? It doesn't have to mean anything, but it's also everything. That's the beginning stages of how we're learning to express ourselves, you know, and how we're making sense of the world around us. And so that's the place that I went to. You know, when I did the collaboration with Tommy, I went back to my childhood self, because that was a time where, you know, I was paying attention to clothes in a way that I was like, you know, what pieces made me feel closer to myself? What pieces made me feel the most reflected when I looked in the mirror, and, you know, if I felt like I would be seen when people looked at me. So, you know, I cut out, you know, skinny jeans. I lived in I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and my household was very restrictive. And so, you know, in terms of like expression, you know, and so I made my own ways to express myself. You know, I cut out my jeans, and I cut out my shirts, like my graphic tees, and I stitched the little graphics into my jeans, and, you know, but I didn't think I was a designer or anything. I just thought I was cute, you know, and I was. And, you know, that's what I brought to Tommy, you know, and I had to go back to that space to de-homogenize the ways that I was used to seeing people's bodies in clothes. And that's the work that I think one has to do if they want, you know what I mean? Like, if they want their art, their fashion to reflect the world, you have to really look at the world around you and not only surround yourself with people who look like you, right? You need to have friends and people around you with different experiences, come from different places. We're not living in bubbles, and that's not what our clothing and the things that we create look like. Blank, boring bubbles, you know? Like, and so it's like really, I was just thinking about that and how, you know, dehomogenizing body types, how would that impact the way that a leotard is made, right? Like, you know, for some people who need more space for, you know, to like protect and cover their genitalia, and like, you know, thinking about different intimacies like that, and like all the different variations in people's genitals, and like, how that, you know, that all comes into play. Like, you actually have to go there and imagine that. And not everyone has the creative capacity in their minds to think that, to imagine that. And if they do, it's probably really gross. And it's probably like, oh my God, what do you have in your pants? You know, are you in the right restroom? It's usually transphobia, right? And so when you unpack and you know, when you unpack those things in your mind, you start to see people as human beings and bodies that need different sizings and different shapes and clothes to fit properly. What does it look like? And so that was an experiment for me. And it was, you know, something that came from me and from my heart. And you know, the Tommy team was extremely supportive. You know, there were moments where I felt like I was being difficult in the collaboration, and there were moments where I felt like the team was being difficult in a collaboration, you know, at times. Because when we're talking about, you know, again, we're moving into a space that is uncomfortable and inconvenient, you know, at the end of the day for this time. Like, it's just not socially, it's not a social norm for people to be like, why, you know, let's get these 4X sizes in. What's going on? You know, let's get the 4X, let's get the 5. Sorry, I forget I have my microphones and things going on. I'm like, you know, let's get the 4X, let's get the 3X, let's bring it on. Let's make sure that everybody can fit in these clothes. And so there was a learning moment for me, because I'm like, well, why can't we do it? What do you mean? You know, and I'm like, okay, the production, let's call the people who are making the clothes and who are responsible for doing that. Let's, you know, let's see what we can do. But it's a larger conversation. And then also, I didn't know what my creative capacity or limitations was. When I came in and somebody else co-collaborating, I'm like, okay, y'all, this is what we gotta do. You know, boom, 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 boom. And there's so many other moving pieces that I just don't know about. There are other parts of the fashion industry that are responsible for how clothes get made in brands that haven't changed yet, and that the brands that are interacting with them aren't fully responsible over. And so this was something that I actually learned and got into. And so it's not only just the fashion houses that need change, it's also the people behind the scenes who are making the presets for these clothes. And there's also the question of how expensive clothing could be if we're not looking at, you know, like for you know, size-wise, like the bigger the clothes, you're like, oh, the more expensive it could be to produce. I don't think so. I think that's a poor excuse. When, you know, the more you reflect other people in your clothes, the more money you're just gonna make. You know, people are gonna buy your stuff. That's just the way the math works. The more people who can see themselves in your things, you know, the more interest you're gonna get, naturally.
Well, you raised a good point there, and I think, Tommy, this is the last word from you. And the essence of a good collaboration is when both parties learn something. So what are you taking away?
I like to continually evolve the brand forward, and the only way you do that is with new ideas and fresh ideas, without losing the DNA. So I want the DNA always to be intact, but I always want the line to be new and fresh. So when I'm bringing people in to collaborate with me, they're bringing their ideas to my dining table, and we basically put their ideas into the blender with our ideas and have something new. You know, the Zendaya collaboration, the Gigi Hadid collaboration, the Lewis Hamilton collaboration was all about that, where we actually embraced their ideas. We didn't want to design it and put their name on it or put their picture in front of it. I don't think that's authentic. Authentic is co-designing together and surrounding the collaborators with a team of skilled designers who can execute, find the fabrics, cut the patterns, find all the accessories, and give choices to the collaborators. So we build a new puzzle, in a sense.
Well, thank you very much, and thank all of you. I think this is a brave new world, and I love this platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian, India. Yo, you can all stay seated for a moment. Halima and Tim, that was a really powerful conversation, and thank you for being so open and candid about the, your lived experiences. So that brings us to the end of our second session. It's going by so fast. Inside the Fashion System is now done. To our members watching from home or from work or from school, I see you sharing from all over the place. It's amazing. Please keep doing so. See you back here in 2 hours at 3 p.m. London time for our session on technology and innovation, featuring the renowned mycologist Merlin Sheldrake. And we'll get a glimpse of how new technologies are changing consumer behavior, including several conversations about the metaverse. So we'll see you in 2 hours. Bye-bye, everyone at home.